Oh, hey, what's up you guys? How's it going? It's Papa, and today we're going to be taking a look at my updated Yosenju deck profile that I've been playing for the current April 2021 format. Lots of new texts that are in it, and different card choices than I had in my last list, and if you haven't seen my last list, please go ahead and check it out on the channel because it's still there. And it's one of the few It's one of the few deck profiles that I actually have on my channel that doesn't have dislikes, so there's something that you guys like. Just subscribe for more and maybe you'll like all that other shit too. Yosenju is one of my favorite sleeper decks that I have for the format. I mean, sure, it is just a little glass cannon and fragile, but I mean, when it does pop off, it really does. So without further ado, why don't we just go ahead and see what we're playing with, shall we? Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into things, shall we? So starting off with the main deck, we do play the 3 copies of 1. The 1 copy of 2, I changed it from 2 to 1 just because every time I do pick up Yosenju, I find Kama 2 just to be weaker every single time. Sure, he has the most attack points, but his effect is just weaker than all the other ones, so I think only having the 1 is fine. And then we max out on Kama 3 now instead of playing the 2. I do like Kama 3 better just instead of the Kama 2 because this searches you any Yosenju card as opposed to a Yosenju monster or Yosenju spell. You don't play any of the spells because they're bad, but when you play 3 copies of 3, it acts as another 1 or another 2, and then it gets you into Izna as well. A lot of people don't know what Izna does still. I still think this card is great. I just don't like having 3 of it or 1 of it because it doesn't come up enough at 1, and then at 3 there's too much of it. So having the balance at 2 is fine because every time that this card is summoned and you have another Yosenju card on the field, you can draw a card. So it just helps out with your consistency. It interrupts with a certain card that I do play in the deck, but that's it for the monsters. We just play the 9 as opposed to 10. I did a lot of changes since the last time I picked up this deck. So jumping into the spells, we play the 1 copy of Demise. This card is still broken because at the end phase you get to declare which end phase effect you're resolving. So you go end phase, resolve Demise, and then end phase, resolve your Yosenju cards to where they bounce back to the hand, which acts really well because we're playing a lot of cards that complement that. 3 Pot of Prosperity. You don't have to play Pot of Prosperity. I just play it in here because I have them, and I like the over extravagance because when you play Prosperity, you get to deck thin as much as possible, and then it gets you to that exact card that you need as opposed to just drawing a random 2 off of Extravagance. And don't get me wrong, Extravagance is really good to play as well if you want that extra draw card off of it. But I play the Prosperity just because it gets me to exactly what I need. And then we play 3 copies of Pot of Duality. I mean, it doesn't interrupt with Prosperity because it adds instead of draws. So you don't special summon at all in this deck, at least during your turn you don't. But playing the 3 Pot of Duality is really good. It helps out with the consistency, and worst comes to worst, your games 2 and 3, you could side out a copy if you want. Arguably, you can do the same with this, 3 tanky. I was playing 2 in my last build, but I bumped it up to 3 because I'm playing only 9 monsters, so having the 9 with the 3 tanky will put you at 12 monsters in the deck. You could arguably play more if you cut the Demise, but since I'm playing the Demise, I wanted to have as many less chances as opening up too many monsters, so I just thought the 9 monsters with the 3 tankies was good in a 41 card deck. So mathematically it feels right. I don't know if it is right, but it feels good. And then one of the cards that is really questionable is 3 copies of Super Polymerization. So you could arguably not play this. You could play any other card you want. You could play 3 more trap cards if you want. But I found Super Poly just to be very good because of the end phase effect to where they all do bounce back to hand, because then you have a discard fodder for your Super Poly during your opponent's turn and it acts as an extra interruption. Plus, if you go second against anyone, then you get to use Super Poly during your turn 1 as opposed to your turn 0, because then whatever your opponent has, you can just go ahead and swoop up their board with Super Poly and then just resolve your cards from there. But that's going to be it for the spell cards. Moving on to the trap lineup, we do play 3 copies of Lose 1 Turn still. I was going over Lose 1 Turn or Underdog. I think Lose 1 Turn is still just better just because you're mainly summoning during your turn anyway, unless you resolve the Super Polymerization, but for the most part you're not special summoning at all unless you do trigger Super Poly, and if you do, like, it doesn't matter because you're doing it during your opponent's turn. So when it does get back to your turn, you get to switch your monster back to attack position, so it's really good there. The only counter trap I'm playing in the deck is 3 copies of Solemn Strike, just because I feel it's the most appropriate. I still think this is the best card in the game right now, as opposed to how slow the format is. I mean, sure, there is combo, but if you are going to go ahead and play trap heavy, then you might as well be playing 3 strike because it's just that good. And then for normal traps, I do play the 2 copies of Trap Trick. I don't like 3 of this card. I never have liked 3 of this card because this acts as any other normal trap in your deck. So I think I'll just go ahead and show off what I am playing. Only 2 Sword Sting. I still don't like this card at 3 because you can search it off comma 3. And especially now that we're maxing out on comma 3, you don't have to play 3 Sword Sting because you can just search the extra copy, or you can just banish one and set it off a Trap Trick depending on what your situation is. And then I played 3 copies of Dogmatica Punishment. This card is crazy in this deck because your extra deck does not matter in this deck. When we do get to the extra deck, which is going to be here shortly, you'll see that a lot of the cards in the extra deck are just extra. They don't matter per se, but I do have a lot of targets that I can send off a punishment, so I like the idea behind that. And then 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. This card is still broken at 3, and I feel like if you're playing a trap heavy deck, then you have to play 3 Torrential. It's the same thing that I feel about 3 Solemn Strike. If you're going to be playing a trap deck, then you should definitely be maxing out on these 2 because they are just the most powerful trap cards in the game. And then the last 3 trap cards that I play are 3 copies of Witch's Strike because your Yosenju monsters are very, very weak by themselves, so you're not going to be really going into the extra deck most of the time either. What you're going to be doing is most likely normal summoning Yosenju, it gets negated, and then you pop off of Witch's Strike. And if you have Witch's Strike like strike set, then you're basically going to win that game. But I really like what Witch's Strike can do for the deck. It's really good, and you can set it off Trap Trick. I mean, if you do set it off Trap Trick, you do kind of have your opponent like kind of struggle because they're not going to know what to do. They don't want to really negate any of your effects because then they know that they're going to be losing all the cards that they control. So when you max out on Witch's Strike, it gives you that chance to draw it, so that way you don't have to set it off a Trap Trick, so that way they know to play around it, because you're trying to throw them off guard, and playing 3 strike in the main deck will go ahead and do that for you. And if it's bad, then you can just go ahead and side it out game 2 and 3 in game 3. But that's it for the main deck. Let's go on to the extra deck. It's really not that important. I think the main deck is just better, but for extra deck, I do play 3 copies of Entis because sending this off of Punishment will get you an extra form of interruption. And then I play 1 copy of Mud Dragon of the Swamp just because it's your most generic super poly target. Same with Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. If you have the Rocket Fusion that came from the structure deck, play that. You should be playing that in the extra deck as well. I don't have one yet, so once I do get one, believe me, I'm going to be playing it because it swoops up the Dragon Link board and then it just puts you in a really good game state. Or if you really want to be cheeky, then you could play 5-headed dragon. Since I don't have a Rocket Fusion or another good target, I do play the Cordius. The odds are you're never making this. You usually send this off of Prosperity like all the time. So it's just there to be material. And then 1 Elysium. It's rare when you make this, but it's good to have when you do play against Invoked. So having it in here just to be a more like safe factor, it's just superior in that way. And then 1 Omega because it helps you recycle your graveyard. So what you do is you just recycle your dead monsters if they are in the graveyard because you play such a small amount and you do need monsters to win the game. So it's just something that you can send off a Punishment. And then I play, you're probably never going to make these cards, but I just have them in here anyway. So I play the 1 Exciton because sometimes you need that extra board wipe. 1 Chidori because you can make it since all the Yosenju monsters are wind attribute. Then you can just go into Chidori. Odds are you're never really going to make it because there's just better cards in the extra deck to make. But I have it thrown in here just for like the shock factor and plus Old Legacy. I mean, if people haven't played Yosenju in the past and played Chidori, then feel free to do it again. And then like another bit of shock factor is the Utopia and the Lightning, because when you do Utopia and then Lightning, then you can just slap the Zeus on top after, and then you have 2 material right there. Or you have 2 extra material to use the Zeus effect, and then just puts you in a really good spot because you're going to be detaching the 2 level 4s that you use to make the Lightning. And then when you slap a Zeus right on top, then you have the 2 materials to clear the board with Sky Thunder. So I just thought it was like really cute to have. And then I play 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn and 1 Nightmare Phoenix just because I feel that they are the most generic links to be playing. But yeah guys, that's gonna be it for the deck profile today. And yeah guys, that's it. So hope you enjoyed this video. I mean, it's a little different style that I'm used to doing, so if you like it, please let me know down in the comment section below. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to try a new setup. I decided to take my old mic stand that I had, and then I equipped a phone equipment to it to where it can display my whole field as opposed to just me zooming in, showing like very few cards. But instead now we get to see the whole field basically as if it was a remote duel setup. It is still something I want to do in the future, is learn how to remote duel. I haven't done it since, and I have had friends do it and have a lot of success, so I want to try and be one of those. So yeah, that's really it. And until next time, this has been Papa, and I will catch you all in my next video. Take care, everyone.